Welcome back to John Dawson Disc Golf. Today I want to unpack something that surprises almost everyone the first time they really fall into this sport. Disc golf looks simple, but the deeper you go, the more you realize it's an incredibly technical game. By the way, if you're new here, I'm John Dawson. I play almost every day, and I'm still trying to understand at my age why this game has become such a big part of my day. From the outside, disc golf looks almost casual. Someone standing in a park holding what appears to be a frisbee, aiming at a basket. It looks relaxed, approachable, maybe even a little improvised. But if you spend any time with the game, you quickly realize something important. Disc golf is not simple. It's layered. It's technical in a way that most people would never imagine. The first hint of this complexity shows up in the discs themselves. In traditional golf, the ball never changes. You might switch clubs, but the ball itself is always the same. The game is built around one object interacting with different tools. Disc golf flips that idea on its head. In disc golf, the discs are the tools, and every single one of them behaves differently. Players end up thinking constantly about speed and glide and turn, fade. Weight becomes a variable. Plastic type becomes a variable. Wear becomes a variable. A brand new disc flies one way, and that same disc, after 100 tree hits, becomes something else entirely. Then you add spin and nose angle, release angle, power, and wind into the equation, and suddenly what looks like a simple throw is actually a complex interaction between physics and timing. And that's just the beginning. Because disc golf isn't limited to one type of throw. There isn't a single universal motion the way there is in traditional golf. Instead, players end up developing an entire vocabulary of throws. The backhand is usually the foundation, but then there's the forehand. There are rollers that travel along the ground. There are overhand throws like tomahawks and thumbers that dive vertically through the air. And then there are all the different kinds of putts, like the straddle putt and the step putts, the jump putts, the spin putts, the sploosh putts. Each one has its own mechanics. Each one requires different timing and body positioning. And then, of course, then the course itself adds another layer. Traditional golf courses are mostly open landscapes. Fairways stretch forward in front of you. Hazards are placed carefully along the edges. The whole thing feels controlled. Disc golf courses often live inside forests. You're throwing through gaps in trees. You're shaping shots under low ceilings of branches. Sometimes you're climbing hillsides. Sometimes you're throwing over ravines. Sometimes you're carrying water that sits directly between you and the basket. Some holes are wide open, where distance is the challenge, and then others are just tight tunnels where the difference between a perfect throw and a mistake might be 6 inches. And when a disc lands, the story doesn't necessarily end there. Discs skip, they slide, they roll. A perfect shot can suddenly turn into trouble depending on the angle of the ground or the roots under the surface. The terrain itself becomes part of the puzzle. All this means that a single shot in disc golf isn't just about throwing hard or throwing straight. It's about selecting the right disc, visualizing the right flight path, choosing the right angle, and trusting that the disc will do what it's designed to do. And that leads to one of the more amusing aspects of golf culture, the bags. When people first see a disc golf bag, they're often confused by how many discs someone is carrying. It's not unusual for a player to have 20 or 30 discs with them during a round. And that might sound excessive until you understand what's happening. Each one serves a different purpose. Each disc might be perfect for long sweeping, distance lines. Another might hold a gentle turnover. Another might fight the wind. Another might land softly on a hillside. Another might skip aggressively around a corner. The more you play, the more you realize that each disc becomes a specific solution to a specific problem. And those problems change constantly. The wind changes, the terrain changes, the distance changes, the line through the trees changes. So the game becomes this ongoing series of micro decisions. So what disc do I use on this hole? What angle do I need to throw out of my hand? And what speed? What shape should I give this disc as it comes out of my hand? And then once you start seeing the sport through that lens, something interesting happens. What looks simple from the outside begins to reveal its depth. Disc golf is not just a game of mechanics. It's a game of imagination. You stand on the tee and picture a line through the air that curves around trees. It climbs through open spaces. It glides forward and then fades towards the basket. Then you try to translate that image into a throw. Sometimes it works beautifully. Sometimes the trees remind you who's really in charge. But that combination of variables is what makes the game so fascinating. And here's the irony. Even though disc golf is incredibly technical, it's also incredibly accessible. You don't need a country club membership. You don't need thousands of dollars in equipment. You don't need tee times booked weeks in advance. Most courses are in public parks. Anyone can show up with a few discs and start playing. That accessibility is one of the most beautiful things about the sport. It means the barrier to entry is almost non-existent. But the ceiling of mastery is incredibly high. You can spend years exploring the nuances of different discs, different lines, different throws, different conditions. You can refine your form. You can build a bag that feels perfectly tuned to your style of play. And the deeper you go, the more you realize that there's simply more to learn, which is why disc golfers rarely get bored with the game. It keeps revealing new layers, new possibilities, new shots you didn't even know existed. And every once in a while, when you pick the right disc and you release it at that right angle and watch it carve exactly the line you imagined, you realize something. This simple looking game is anything but simple. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear what part of disc golf surprised you the most once you started playing. And if these conversations are meaningful to you, consider subscribing. I'm exploring these questions in real time, and I'd be glad to have you along for the journey. Because you see, the deeper you go into disc golf, the more you realize something. What looks simple from the outside is actually a beautifully complex game. And that complexity is part of what keeps us coming back. As always, thank you for being here on John Dawson Disc Golf.